and safe, and welcome to our engagement sessions where we are looking today at license expiry workflow. Our presenter is Renier, who's going to present this topic, and the topic should be run for approximately 30 minutes. So I ask you to keep your lines, your mics on mute. And also, when you want to ask a question, use the chat section where you can just type in your question as we go along. And then at the end of the session, we'll have an opportunity to answer the questions that you put in there. And during the presentations, we will also try to answer some of the questions that you post in there. So without wasting much of your time, before I hand you over to Renier, I will also ask you to complete a survey at the end that I'm going to post on the chat as well. If you can complete it and indicate, especially some of the topics that you wish us to cover. If you can just indicate some of the topics that you wish us to cover, then we will consider them in the upcoming sessions. Thank you. I hand you over now to Renier.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that. Yeah, and without further ado, we'll get going, guys. Good morning, everyone. I'm sure not everyone knows me. My name is Renier Pienaar. I'm a technical support consultant at Sage. This has been my role for the past 10 years, and it's something that I enjoy doing. We'll be reviewing the license expiry workflow during this webinar. And yeah, let's get going. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. If you can't see the screen that I'm busy sharing, then please just let me know. But we'll get going. So we're going to have a look at the overview of what we're going to be covering here. We'll kick off a brief introduction, followed by a basic analysis of the actual workflow that we've created for you guys and how it actually works. After this, we'll have a look at how to apply this workflow and just a general demonstration. The general demonstration would involve us setting the system time to basically simulate days or weeks or months going past, and we'll see how the workflow will then trigger based on that. The workflow is compatible with all versions of Sage X3. And we'll have a look at the compatibility, but basically any version older than V11 may require some tweaking, but I think in most cases you'll find that the demonstration we're doing on V12, the same patch is used for V11, just to show you the compatibility. So it's extremely compatible with older versions, and you can probably use the same patch in PU9. It may require some tweaking, but we can always just reapply the patch for you if you need the patch. So then we'll have a Q&A session just before we close, and this is the section where we're going to use to obviously answer the questions that you guys have asked that we haven't covered during the presentation. So yeah, in general, a date is very easy to forget, specifically a software license date. We're still facing this on a yearly basis, and this is why we've decided to reintroduce this particular workflow for all the versions of Sage X3. And we're also going to ask the guys to maybe possibly in the future just build it into the standard seed folder, so you don't even have to apply it as a patch. Time passes very quickly, and we often leave licenses to the last moment where it might just be too late. Time flies when we're having fun, and therefore it's easy to be caught off guard with something like a license file. And the documentation that we're using here would be this presentation. So I'll make this presentation available to you guys. We'll probably also create a blog after this webinar, in which further of your questions may be posted, and you can actually ask some more questions there. There's also a brief PDF that basically explains the installation procedure, but that we'll cover during this webinar. So we'll have a look at that as well. We'll now have a look at the actual workflow on our image. So I'm just going to end this and go directly onto the image. Just want to make sure I've got that. And here we go. So first things first is when you extract the patch that we'll make available to you guys, it'll look like this. You can see it's still in V11, but this patch you'll see applies perfectly fine in V12. This particular patch level for this image is on patch 19, and this is the actual patch there. This is the PDF that I said I'm going to share with you guys afterwards. So we'll share that one with you afterwards. So you could just go through that. So let's have a look how we set up the patch. It's basically set up under administration, development, utilities, patches, patch integration. This is where we're going to copy the patch. So I copy this patch. We'll start by doing that, and we're just going to put it into our patch directory under the seed folder. I must just tell you guys that I've already applied this patch previously, so it's going to come up with a warning message saying that I've already applied this patch, but I just want to run you through the motions of how to apply the patch. So then we go to X3, you can log in as admin or admin profile. And then we're going to navigate to our live data folder. In this case, it's the seed folder. So just imagine this is the live folder. And then inside here, we'll go to development, utilities, patches, patch integration. So here we go, patch integration. And we're just going to launch that. Over here under this section, we're going to select the server type. So personally, I always apply this type of patch from the actual server itself. You can obviously also apply it from the client, in which case you can select the file. So we're going to use the server option. We're going to browse or select the patch directory. And then inside there, we'll select our patch. And then we'll click on OK. For integration purposes, you can tick patch integration, comment override, untick deferred validation, and tick link synchronization. We're not going to be applying the patch in our reference folder, so you can remove that option. So we're going to delete that option from the list of patches that will be integrated. We're going to click on OK and just remember the warning message. Here we'll say, yes, we have read the ADX patch HTML file. Let's select yes. That error message is in actual fact a warning message that will appear, and it says patch already integrated. So we can choose to ignore this. So we can just go close that, and then it pops up with this box, continue despite the errors, and we're going to say yes. So I just want to simulate the patch being applied. So what this patch then does or applies is basically the actual workflow and also a parameter, a date parameter that's created in the supervisor module. Okay, so we'll have a look at that in a sec. But here you can see the patch is integrated quite successfully. There's a couple of warning messages, and that's it. That's what we want to see. So we can actually close that. And here, the patch is already triggering, and it's saying header condition not met, meaning that the date is not older than either 6 months or 3 months. So now we're going to analyze the actual workflow. I'm just going to show you guys how that works. We'll start with a parameter that has to be set. Now this parameter has to be set equal to the expiry date of the actual license file. So if I go to administration, I go to license data, and I view my license, I can see this particular license expires 1st of November 2021. 1st of November 2021. I know it's not the 11th of January 2021, otherwise the license file would not have worked. So it's definitely 1st of November 2021. So this is the date that we need to set against our parameter. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, unfortunately, for this parameter to take effect, you have to close the session and reopen the session. So let's quickly go and do that. So we're going to go to parameters setup, general parameters, parameter values. And then inside here, under the supervisor module, I expand that, go to my folder, seed folder, default values over here. So we're going to display those values. And then right at the bottom here, I can see there's my value. This was the first time we actually created this patch, roughly about a year ago. And here we can then set it, and we're going to set it to expire on the 1st of November. So this date format is basically set up in the regional settings for Syracuse, and that's where you actually choose this format. So I'm just going to tab away from that setting, make sure that I save that value, otherwise it won't take effect. So click on OK, and then very important, make sure that you save, otherwise it won't take effect. And then you've just got to log out and back into the system. And then before we actually simulate the date being changed, I'm just going to show you a breakdown, give you a brief breakdown of the two workflows that's created when you apply this patch. So we're going to exit completely for that parameter to take effect, and then we'll have a look at the workflows. So we'll log out. Normally I just clear the cache. To clear the cache, hard clear the cache, Control F5 does exactly that. So if you press that a couple of times, you notice the screen flickers. The best way in Chrome to do it is actually just clear the entire history. That way you know that the cache is also cleared. But Control F5 also works. So admin, just log in, default password and username. And now we'll briefly have a look at the workflow. So under setup, workflow rules. If I filter for Z, which is where we created the patch, I'll see there's two. There's ZLIC expiry 30 days, and then Z license expiry 60 days. So this one is set to 30 days. It works on the basis where it actually just deducts the current system date from that value that we set. It gives amount of days. If that value is smaller than 30, it triggers the workflow. And that rule or condition is then met, and it basically triggers the workflow. The date obviously cannot be smaller, so hence we've actually done 0. In other words, it can't be a negative value, so therefore we've just included that value there. Okay, so it may not be necessary to include this particular condition, but it's just put it in there to safeguard the actual date range to make sure that it's between 1 and 30. And that's basically how that one works. And then we've also got, then we've also got one for 60 days. Works on this exact same principle, except this one checks that that range is bigger than 30 and smaller than 60. And that's basically it. So very basic, but very effective. Then under the message, this is where it gets or recipients tab at least, where I want to show you the recipients tab. This is where you can include additional emails. For example, you can include Melinda's email. You can say Melinda is a business partner, and then you can include melinda.labuskaghni@sage.com, or whoever the licensed person is that you're dealing with at Sage, to ensure that this person also receives a mail when this workflow is triggered. And that's actually a very good idea. So you can hard code it. Hard coding the email is as simple as just using inverted commas and then putting Bob, for example, at sage.com, and Bob will receive an email. Okay, so you can say, yes, I want to send an email. What's Bob function? You can select the function, whatever the function is. We'll just leave it on managing director. And then milestone, you can just say no, and delegate option, you can just say no, we're not using the delegates option. So we can just say no there, or you don't even have to specify it. It's not mandatory field. So that's it, you can save it. And now Bob will automatically also receive a mail. Very easy way to actually just hard code additional email address. Obviously that email address has to exist. If it doesn't exist, you're going to get errors when sending them out. And it's as simple as that. So to trigger it, we're just going to set the date. And to do that, I will basically just go into the system date and basically change that to, let's make it October, and make it less than November the 1st. So October the 15th will definitely trigger the workflow. So let's just go and trigger that. And here we're going to select date and time settings. Over here, we'll untick that option there to set time automatically. And here we're going to change it to October. Let's just make it the 15th, just to be double sure that it definitely, that's bam smack in the middle. And that should then trigger the workflow. We're just going to say change. And that's it. So now, just one more thing that I want to share with you. It's set to a miscellaneous type of workflow, which basically triggers each time or checks the conditions each time you start a session. So that's the ideal. So each time you start a X3 session or you do a function for the first time inside Sage X3, it'll trigger that workflow and it'll check for the conditions. If the conditions are met, it will trigger the mail. Otherwise, it's just going to say conditions not met. And we could just log in there. Just want to make sure that we are logged out. It doesn't look like we logged out because, like I say, that workflow only triggers each time we log in. So I just want to log out completely. Okay, that's just a session expiry. And same there. And just to be on the safe side, we'll clear the cache. And here we go. So now we can just go to any function, doesn't matter which one, batch or whatever, doesn't matter where we go. It will trigger that function. Now, let's just go to usage, task management. So first function that we trigger, it should now trigger that workflow. Let's see. And there, it's actually triggered the workflow the minute I exited the, and here you can see because the conditions are met, it actually sends the workflow. It sends it to admin. It's the first workflow or email. And it says your license file will expire in 15 days. Remember, we set it to the 15th. And that's basically it. So a very, very effective way of basically ensuring that we get notified when the license file expires. And effectively, that's that, guys. Nothing more to this. You can apply this workflow quite effectively inside any version of X3, and it will trigger. Now, it only trigger once. You'll see if you go into anything now, quotes, for example, it's not going to trigger again. So it's only going to trigger the first time, or check the first time somebody opens a function, and this could be any person. Now, I've switched on debugging in the background. You can switch it off. So in other words, you won't see those screens in the background. And in actual fact, it's a good idea to switch it off because each time it triggers, debugging adds a little bit of processing in the background, so it might just consume a little bit of processing. It won't be a lot. But you can see as I go out here now, it's not going to trigger again, and that's basically it. So I am just going to go in this sharing, go back to the presentation. Well, let's just minimize this, and then we can go back to our presentation. And guys, I think at this stage we can start the Q&A session. Let's have a look at any questions that you guys have asked. There's quite a few questions in the chat. Andrew, should we start the Q&A session?
Yeah, sure, Renier. Let's go for it. So the first one I've actually answered. When will be the patch file be available on the FTP server? I said by close of business tomorrow. Okay. Okay. Some sites do not allow emails from X3 to be sent to external addresses. Is there a way to build in authentication on X3 mail engine to resolve this?
That particular issue, I would suggest that you log it. The way X3 works in terms of the mail that's being sent is this mechanism relies on mail relaying, something that the internet no longer requires. In the early days of the internet used what was called mail relaying. So if a server wasn't available, it would have a relay server that could be used instead of that particular server that wasn't available. And therefore, there still are ways to actually set it up even securely. If you set up a mail account to allow mail relaying and set it up with proper authentication, you are protected from spam, for example. You must, however, set it up in such a way that you are requiring some form of authentication. Otherwise, you could be the victim of spam, for example, where certain people can use your account to send mails to the rest of the internet, and your server will quickly be blacklisted if you do not control that properly. If you control it properly, you can actually send mail to external using this particular mechanism. It's hopefully a mechanism we'll review in the future, and it's actually something that I think we should highlight as an improvement or suggestion. In other words, just to make sure that we don't use the old mechanisms of mail relaying, but we make this a little bit easier. The utility is called mail-ADX that's used inside X3, but yes, it can be used to actually send mail externally as well. Hope that answers the question.
Another question there is there any additional settings to be done after setting up workflow rules to allow emails to be sent from X3?
Okay, this is a general question that relates to email in general. You can, if you're not 100% sure, if you guys are obviously all business partners, I'm sure. So you're more than welcome to log a case with us for that particular issue, and we can actually have a look and assist you in how to actually go about doing it. But there is a few settings that has to be set up in order for workflow to work, other than what I've shown you. This obviously builds on the premise that you guys know how to set that up already.
Okay, another question again coming through. Is it possible to automate the date selection after having set the workflow?
Just repeat that last part with the what selection?
Is it possible to automate the date selection after having set the workflow?
Yes, you would require small customization to do that, but yes, it would be possible. You can write a small little customization that looks at the license file. It'll have to read the license file and then use that particular value and then set it inside, set a parameter inside Sage X3, and there's actually a formula that you can use to do that. But yes, it would involve a small customization, but yes, you can do that.
Okay. And then another question again, what about subscription customers that the license expires monthly? Does that mean we have to modify the parameter monthly after applying the license? You know, the subscription customers, the license, yeah.
For Sage X3, I don't think we've got any subscription. I'm not aware of any subscription customers.
There are some customers, yes.
But yeah, it kind of adds on nicely to the previous question, because if you've built a customization that automatically looks at your license file and triggers each time you change your license file or update your license file, then it will automatically set the parameter setting. So it sort of adds on very nicely to the previous question that was asked, where if you've got a little customization like that built, then it would automatically set the subscription customer's date So in other words, that workflow will trigger based on the system date, but the system date or the parameter in the system date will automatically be updated by the little customization.
Okay, thank you, Renier. I think you've answered most of the questions, or in fact, all the questions that have been uploaded here. So I think I've just posted on the chat the survey. So
Sure.
anyone is more than welcome to complete the survey, and then let's get your feedback. And then once again, thanks, Renier, for the presentation. And then you can actually conclude. I don't know if you still have anything to say for conclusion.
No, thank you very much, guys. The only thing I'd like to add is we'll create a blog, and if you have additional questions, you're welcome to actually share it on the blog, and we'll monitor the blog from time to time, like on a weekly basis, for example, just to make sure that there's not any questions that you guys have. But yes, we'll make this available to you guys. This recording will also be made available. Jody will share this recording. And yeah, we'll just view the recording and we'll make it available ASAP to you guys.
All right.
And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Renier, and then thanks everyone for attending our webinar. Please take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Only a pleasure, guys.